meeting, which for the town plan, and it's a select board public hearing. And so this part of the meeting is for folks to make comments. Linda, I guess you're here to say a few words.
I do have a very, very brief presentation.
Well, good. It's nice to see you anyway.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I figured for the record, it would be good to at least kind of walk through quickly some of the high points of the plan and kind
That's a great idea, actually.
Review the process that we've been through. So John's got my slides up. So tonight, yeah, this is the second public hearing. The first one was November 16th, and the town is required to do 2 select board hearings for the town plan by state statute. So tonight I'm going to review the process and the timeline that the Planning Commission did with this town plan. I'm going to show a slide summarizing the edits that were made from the previous version of the plan that you all saw at the first select board hearing. Then we'll go into the public comment period. Then the hearing will close. The select board will have the opportunity to discuss what they heard and then consider adopting the plan. Next slide. I think it's just a PDF. You can just scroll down.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
So if you've seen the previous iteration of this presentation, you'll recognize this slide. This describes the process and the timeline that the Planning Commission used for the town plan update. So starting just about a year ago, the Planning Commissioners reviewed the town plan, the old town plan, chapter by chapter, and met with David White, our consultant, to review taking out old information, identifying things that might have been missing, and deciding what things were good to keep. Then we had a very robust public outreach and engagement effort, starting around January of last year and through this whole calendar year. We had online surveys, we had in-person events, we had print materials, and we had a very good engagement with the community. Then starting in February through June, the Planning Commission had work sessions on different topics related to the town plan at their regular meetings. And then starting in the summer, the first version of the town plan was drafted, and then it went through some reviews and edits a couple of times until October. And then October 3rd was the Planning Commission's hearing on the town plan. And once the Planning Commission held that hearing, they approved forwarding the draft to you folks. And so this is where we are at the end here. We are at the second select board hearing and plan adoption. So we're at the end of the line. Next slide. And so this is just highlights of the different chapters in volume 1 of the town plan. So as you probably already know, there was a major format change from the old version of the town plan to this new version to make it a lot more approachable and user-friendly. So volume 1 is where we're going and why, and volume 2 has a lot more of just background and data. So the chapters are Growing a Vibrant Community, which is about the local economy and the village centers. Creating Housing Choices for All, where we discuss more housing that's needed, different variety of types that we need at different price points. Stewarding a Resilient Community, that chapter speaks about strategies to mitigate climate change and protect our natural resources. The Building a Connected Community chapter discusses investments and prioritization of shared infrastructure, things like wastewater and bike and pedestrian networks. And then the Supporting an Effective Community chapter talks about the town government and ensuring that the town has the resources that it needs to be able to implement a lot of the things in the plan. And so after the first select board hearing on November 16th, these are the changes that you folks on the select board approved and that were made by David. So just correcting general typos and grammatical errors, updating and removing any inaccurate or outdated information. There were clarifications added for additional context, examples, and information. And then there were some minor formatting changes so that the whole document could be consistent through all the chapters. But no changes were made to any overall policies or directions that were outlined in the previous version. And that was my brief presentation. So,
well, thank you.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Move into the public comment.
And so it's now, do we have people online tonight?
We do, yeah.
Oh, good.
We did our gallery.
So we'll need to watch that because now it's time for the public comments. And so we'll take turns between people here and people online then. So let's start with somebody online. We don't do that usually very often.
I see no hands.
No hands.
Either.
Does anybody who is watching have any comments for the public hearing? Okay. Nothing, huh? Wow.
Nope.
All right. Anybody here have comments for the public hearing?
Is there a meeting Thursday night?
Yes. And it's it is a meeting. This is just strictly a public hearing for the town plan. And any other questions, comments?
Hi, this is Wayne. I finally got my mute to unmute, but at this time I don't have comments. But will they be allowed later on as you review the town plan?
No, this is the final public hearing. If you have a comment, this is your time to make it, because once we close the public hearing, that's the end of the changes, except for whatever the select board might discuss. Or, you know, and then the select board has the opportunity to approve or and move on.
I see. Yeah, I have a comment, but I don't know if it's related directly to the plan. So yeah, I'll just listen. Thanks.
No, you're welcome. Yeah. Jim?
There's not going to be any public discussion as we go through the plan tonight.
This is your turn right now. This is the second public hearing. If you have a comment to make, this is your time to do it. Once the select board closes the public hearing, that's the end of the public comment period. It moves to the select board, which will discuss it. If we like it or not like it, or anything we want to do with it. And then it's the select board makes its decision. But that's the process.
I have a comment I'd like to make.
Okay.
One of the things that I've tried to pursue, my name's Jim Carroll, I live on Bolger Hill Road, through the whole process of the creation of the town plan, I think there's a fundamental flaw in the old plan and in the logic used in the factual base of planning in Jericho. We constantly talk about the village centers and the potential for development in the village centers. And there's virtually no development potential on a practical basis in the village centers. And it's also incredibly difficult to build in areas that are already fully developed. And I've heard from many people that are residents that they really don't want to have high density and the infrastructure is not there. So we've lost 78% in the last 5 years, according to Keisha Ram, in the cost of development. In other words, it costs $1.78 to build what we could have built for $1 5 years ago. Interest rates have doubled, and the availability of personnel and the shortages. So we're probably in the worst circumstance of my lifetime to create that which it is that we say we want. And if we continue to do the same thing, so one of my friends is Glenn Martin and another's David Villeneuve and the other people who own the center of Jericho, which is closer in proximity to infrastructure. It has the best access to public roads. And we continue to talk illusionary through this document and every other one about the development of the village centers. We need to talk about the development in our town plan of the development of the center of Jericho, where we produce an integrated strategic plan that takes advantage of all of the concepts that we know of smart growth and form-based code and all of those other things. having watched this for over 40 years, it's almost like we don't want those people's lands to be developed because this plan document does not talk to it. We constantly call it the commercial district. Well, it's not. It's the center of Jericho. You've got a bunch of bisecting roads. You've got a river. You've got water in close proximity. You've got the potential for gas and all of the other stuff. Most importantly, one of the most difficult things to get is access. And you have state-funded roads. And you have a very few people who actually own it. So you could actually do a joint venture. So if we really want to accomplish something, which is a change, then we need to do something dramatically different. And I heard Susan talk about that in the beginning. I heard David White talk about, one of the things that we could do is to not have to subdivide or do PRDs because it'll substantially shorten the length of time to actually do the development. It will also shorten the length of time to get it done. And there's no reason why in the basis of zoning, which was established in 1928, that the community gains a benefit by forcing development through single-family lots. So if I have 100 acres of land and I want to create 5 or 6 houses, which I can easily do because I control it, I have the resources, I can't do that in Jericho. You significantly increase the cost of development because of prohibitions of a regulatory nature. Now, South Burlington's fighting this type of overlay stuff, and it's now been taken to the Supreme Court by a foundation because people did not listen during the planning process. So you've got J.L. Davis, Jeff Nick, the Davis family, which is incredibly economically powerful, fighting the city of South Burlington because they didn't listen. And I think that in a very brief period of time, the select board could choose to adopt some moderate changes to this, where you take some of these words and you apply them to the center of Jericho.
Jim, do you think that there's current language in the proposed plan that would prevent the types of zoning changes that you're suggesting?
Yes, I think the strategy is major league misaligned. It continually repeats the fantasy that you're actually going to develop the village centers. And the other thing is, stylistically, that's not how Jericho developed in the past 100 years. We have Jericho East, and Chuck Lacey did an articulate piece that he presented about how there's more homes there than there is in the village centers. And because you have to do resource planning, not word planning. It's not a village center. Where are the resources? And the resources are soils and water and fire protection and safety. And if you just think about it, if you sat at Kate's food truck and you look towards Mount Mansfield, it's one of the most pleasant views in Vermont. And that area could be developed very efficiently, but it didn't get the form-based code. It's not highlighted in your town plan. It's not advantaged by your zoning regulations. Thanks to Mr. Lacey and a few other people, at least now you can get some residential into that area. But if you don't go for infrastructure, so the town plan should not talk about doing things in the future. It should talk about doing them now, like public-private venture. The town does not have the resources, does not have the staff to be able to do it. What it does have, it has bonding. It has the ability to raise financing at less than 50% of what it costs me. If I want to borrow money right now to do land development, it's over 10% plus 2 to 4 points, plus a whole bunches of appraisals. We have $80 million on the books, which is probably a new assessment, might be 140. You could take 15% of $140 million. That's 20 million bucks. Who would hesitate to borrow 20% guaranteed and make that money available in a joint venture for development? Those are the types of things that should be in a strategic plan to move the needle, just like Susan said. I'm 75 years old this year. I've been working on this with Jericho for over 40 years. I don't think I'll live to see the benefits of what's discussed in this plan, because the summary and the needs for positive movement are in fact not there. The costs of development have eroded. And so if we don't do something creative, we're not going to have a diverse, economically viable community. And if you want to see something significant, take a look at how we just lost a major portion of Beta. People don't realize it. There's a free airfield in Plattsburgh with very low activity, 7-foot thick runways, large empty buildings. So what did New York do? They gave them $21 million. And they raised another $21 million. So now all of the research and development flights, all of the finished flights and the finishing of the aircraft just moved to Plattsburgh.
Jim?
Yeah.
Quick question. I mean, is there something in the town plan that you can pinpoint that reflects these thoughts? I'm reading through some of the getting it done sections, and some of it's addressing what you're saying. I mean, it talks about a capital plan moving forward with infrastructure, with the town. It talks about evaluating the municipal wastewater. I mean, some of the stuff you're talking about, I'm looking at it right now.
But the word evaluate, Joe, doesn't get anything done.
Well,
This is the plan.
yeah. So there's a difference between a plan and actually action. And the plan is the idea, the overall idea. All right. So where the rubber meets the road is the next step.
Right.
All right. The town plan is a guide. When we deal with zoning and planning and zoning, when the DRB is evaluating projects, they're going from the zoning regs, okay, not the town plan. So if things are going to be incorporated to push some of this, there has to be some items at the next step, okay? So is it carte blanche saying that the commercial district is going to be the center of attention? No, I don't see that. But it also doesn't take it away that the issues plaguing the commercial zone, such as wastewater and really just decent municipal water, it does mention that those are considerations. So some of that stuff I think is in there.
Well, I think you're right generally.
It isn't.
Just to add on to that, that was one of my initial concerns with, I don't know which draft, 2 maybe, and Chuck had talked to me about it, had a nice chat with him, and so then I had a really nice conversation with Susan and Sabina, and they really helped me understand that. So some of my specific concerns were that it felt like that it restricted growth outside of the centers. And after that discussion and like looking back through and going over it, I left that conversation not as concerned with the restrictions outside of the center. It certainly encourages the center because that's what Vermont is saying. That's what the regional, the CCRPC is saying. I mean, it's following that guidance. But it is, I hear your concerns, and I think this plan helps them. I don't think it hurts them. I think it helps them. I guess what I'm trying to say.
And as I, sorry to interrupt you, but as I read through the 10 elements of the town plan, doing that stuff is not listed in the elements of the town plan. Now, it's definitely clear that a statement of the objective policies and programs of the municipality are stated in the town plan. It doesn't say anything about us, the town plan, executing that. Okay, there's a big difference between the two. So
only in the getting it done does it talk about different
Yes,
processes.
yes.
Well, Joe, I'll speak to a specific issue that is an opportunity that sits here right now with relatively minor modifications that could create a phenomenal strategic direction. And I'll just use some real specifics. That we can't grow more land. The commercial district is as close to the center of Jericho as it can get. Trying to develop the Tetro property is sort of like developing the town of Richmond for many of the people who live in Jericho. So the closer you get to the physical geographical center of Jericho, the more opportunity you have to hold the community together because it's less distance. Am I going to drive to Richmond if I live on Nashville Road, or am I going to drive to the store that's almost in Underhill? So if we think about those logistics, but let's take the commercial center. If our strategic plan spoke to the alignment of what the resources are that are necessary to accomplish development effectively and efficiently, the town and the state have rare resources that are not available to any of us who do private development. They have rights of way. So we've just watched the permitting of the Balch property. I've talked about it for 10 years. Their engineers spoke to the fact that the water table on a good portion of that property was at 35 feet. The town wanted to preserve and protect the scenic area. That area could have had the town plan and the regulations spoken to the creation of resource districts to be able to take a parcel of land like the Balch property and make it available as a sewage resource for the commercial district. I could probably get 4 to 5 times as much development into the commercial district as I could have trying to rely on the commercial district itself for its own sewage capacity. And who's got the right of way? The state of Vermont, the town of Jericho. Who's got the authority to be able to combine property that's owned by different people into a cohesive land development plan? It's certainly not the individual developer.
Understood. There's this possibility for stuff like that, but every time you look at financing that stuff, taxes go up. Now, we issue bonds. Well, I know we can get the lower tax rate and so on, but every time you start looking at a town-initiated service that only supplies a small area, that's a hard sell.
Well, number one, if you charge for the service when it's used, and let's just take, a municipality can bond for 30 years, okay? I participated in the development of Water Tower Hill. We retired the bonds at Water Tower Hill. It wasn't a burden to the town of Colchester, not at all. It qualified for grants that none of us on a private basis could achieve. It built infrastructure that none of us could achieve.
But it also had an interstate exit right there. And we have one road coming into the commercial zone. We have Route 15, that's our only access.
But you have Brown's Trace, but it's...
So
You're talking more about the steps after the plan.
Yeah.
I think the plan needs
in the plan it says at the heart of Jericho's village growth area lie the town's 3 state designated village centers where infrastructure, funding, development incentives, executive duplicate permitting will continue to be important. And it talks about the village core and village neighborhoods. And and of that core, these are the traditional existing village centers plus the commercial district. These are places where the highest concentration and variety of mixed-use developments should be found. They are economic centers with a mix of retail, service, hospitality, light manufacturing, and civic uses, with a mix of residential types on upper stories and interspersed throughout. They have highest priority for new development and public investment intended to facilitate such development. It talks about the your commercial district. It also talks about that we're fortunate that, not only does it also has a master plan. So it is mentioned, it's talked about how to do it. I mean, it's in the plan itself. And after that becomes the infrastructure and how you do it and how we're going to fund it. And you have to be careful because you talk about people, who use it, being able to pay for it and stuff. But there is getting to the bond. In 2018, Westford started the process to get community septic within the core of Westford on a particular property. They had all kinds of plans to do it, and got some great grants as money came in.
They got 4 million.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were $400,000 short. That's all.
And they had to bond for that 400,000, and it was voted down.
That's communication. I've
Exactly,
participated.
Well, say whatever you want, but
it still happens.
It's just what people want.
Yes.
One of my friends was a Westford resident. We voted
so
against it.
regardless,
But you've heard some very articulate discussions about the percentage of people in Jericho that actually participate in our democratic process, which is 200 to 300 people at a town meeting.
But this
town plan is a tool for communication.
Right,
this document should be talking about having a growth center, because if you want to facilitate development to meet the needs of the community as it exists today in the year 2023, you need to have the services in proximity, because the jobs are moving towards the homes. They're not moving for high density manufacturing process.
Right.
And
it is mentioned in here that village, this commercial district, it's mentioned to deal with it.
So,
I mean, that's.
But is it designated as a growth center?
Yes, it is.
She just read it.
I just read it. The village growth area is organized into two parts: village core and village neighborhoods. Village core includes the riverside and the commercial district.
I did not hear qualifying growth center to be eligible for Act 250 exemption.
It is.
So either way, the document.
I know.
Is it 5 years we do this? Every godforsaken 5 years?
No, it actually was 5 years to start with, but because a lot of
small towns
they couldn't even get to the zoning in that 5 year before they had to turn it around. So it's now 8 years.
Yeah. So I think it's a good document that opens the door far greater than what we ever had before. I appreciate all the effort into it. I think it definitely provides the avenue for going where we want to go. So
I think we need to ask. Your comments were well heard. Are there any other public comments?
Anybody online? Nope.
No hands raised.
Any other people here have comments to make for the public discussion? I don't see any hand. Oh, I do
clarify one thing is that the village wastewater feasibility study that the town is doing now is also including looking at the commercial district and the needs there and the land there, and the capacity there. Could land there support Riverside? Could land in Riverside support the commercial district? And we were very careful throughout the document to include the commercial district when it was appropriate, which is about 80% of the time. It's not a designated center currently. And in the Getting It Done chapter, we do charge the Plan Commission with implementing zoning updates to implement the master plan. So just to clarify that.
The bridging to create the opportunity to cross over to obtain rights for the community benefit, which is the purpose of zoning, I don't believe is in the document. You're not enabling the identification of capacities like were announced publicly on the Balch property, which are now possibly inside of a homeowners association and might be trapped away from control. That opportunity and those types of techniques are not announced and encouraged in the town plan. And we talked about it, but it all ended up on the cutting room floor. So I want you to know I participated in the meetings, I said things, and I don't find them in the documents. And I've spent over 50 years doing this stuff. I find that Jericho is one of the most difficult places to try to accomplish anything. And I stayed out of here for 40 years and developed in other places and made the mistake of trying to develop in the last 5 years. And I've spent more time in court than I have in building something. And I think you have an opportunity to make significant changes and announce that we want to have a diverse community that is not 95% lily white at the higher end of the strategic economic capability, because our property taxes are in fact going to skyrocket because you got 30% of the school seats empty while you have rising costs, and the opportunities are there. Scott says 18%. And if you add the town, things like the town garage, which people seem to want, we're going to be over 20%. And you want to get the public's attention, hand them a 20% increase in property taxes, because we've limited and blocked development of both economic sources. And this plan has said that we're a commutation historically. And so we've literally not developed the types of things that the people who live here would like to have. And I can debate it with you for a long time. I don't feel as though the democratic process was applied to this, and most of the ideas, including some of the ones that were brought forward by David, ended up on the cutting room floor. There is absolutely no reason why we have to subdivide in order to create single family homes on a common property. There's not a single justification.
But none of that stuff is in there.
It doesn't say, absolutely not. It does not say that you can develop 5 single family homes.
That's zoning.
That's zoning.
I understand.
So the next step would be to the planning commission.
But this document could guide you to working away from specifically limiting things. It doesn't say work away from those things that have caused the economic and the limit of diversification and the affordability of housing and other sources in Jericho. It doesn't say it. And so if you don't create it in your guidance document, it's going to be a nightmare trying to implement it. Several very capable people, far better than I, got our 3-plexes and 4-plexes. But did they end up in most of the zones as being permitted? No, they ended up as conditional. And our process is so complicated, and that but just take a look at how much it costs to develop.
There is specific mention in the plan that our zoning regulations need to be, I don't remember the exact wording, but there's several mentions that cleaning up the zoning regulations to make things just like you're talking about easier. Jim,
it's definitely in there for the form-based code. They reevaluate the form-based code.
Gives us the best opportunity for all the things you're talking about. You
know,
know,
it couldn't be, your concerns are well timed.
Yes.
We have a whole bunch of planning commission members right here. If this is accepted, they've got input right here now of how to facilitate the next step, or what your ideas are in the next step. So there's a positive on it here. Okay. But again, I think in a broad spectrum, the town plans covers some really new ideas. So I think they're there. The next step, we'll see where the next step.
Joe, and I'll just wrap up. I think leveraging the town capital basis is not in there, and it is a creative idea that we have the equity in this town, we have the cash flow, and we can do things and not worry about this 12-month period of time expense, because if you do a TIF district, if you do a growth center, which are the tools that you need to get to immediately conceptually from a governance perspective to be able to accomplish any of this, because it sounds like, oh, it's going to happen, but it's not. You got to really push the pedal to the floor and say, these are the things that we want to see.
TIFs are a great tool, but again, if they don't come fruition, there's a problem too. So.
And the state has limited the number of TIFs.
Yes. So
if you don't spend the money, you've got to create the TIF district, You have to create the TIF district in order to.
We understand that. Again, when it comes to
And
spending
last but
money,
not least, I owe this to Mary Alice Rivers. She offered the property to the town. She didn't trust the town. I sat in her kitchen, and that's the reason why she gave it to the fire department. The fire department in 2016 offered the property to the town. Here we sit in 6 years later.
Different
The property
topic.
was never given to the town. It was only publicized. We worked with the fire department. They kept it.
we are here for the town plan.
That's right.
Well, but that's a strategic part of the town plan.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's easy. It's
It's
easy.
so easy.
It's easy to go.
Yeah, those rabbits do move,
Yeah.
don't they?
Squirrel.
Any other comments that are related to what is in this document?
Yes,
There.
this is Wayne Ellis again, and I have to say that I always love to hear Jim talk because I always learn something, and you guys too. So, but anyways, I have a basic question. My understanding is that the town plan is really aspirational, right? You're setting a direction, and then the various boards and committees are going to actually set the execution. Am I understanding this correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, so if the town plan is saying that we need infrastructure, there will be boards and committees that will be tasked with, or some kind of a manager who will be tasked to, now that the study, I understand the study's done, and then agreeing, it would go what? It would be put before the voters, and then it would be constructed and the money would come for that, right? Am I putting words in your mouth?
We have to, the select board needs to look at the study and see what the priority rate ization of the centers were and where it's best to put the money. But yes, once that is decided, then the town can move forward with the process to whatever it needs to do to move the process forward.
Yes.
Okay, so the plan is aspiration. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, it typically, I understand all this. I'll just facilitate this one thing is, we talk about moving forward and so on and economic development, bonding and so on, but we're also in the throes right now. We're dealing with our budget, and you can't talk about town plan and growth without also thinking budget. And I encourage everyone to once in a while tune in to the budget process. This is my first one, and we don't get from A to B without increasing taxes and money somewhere. So ideas are great, but when you start looking at that sheet and you start seeing taxes increase 20%, a lot of brakes get put on. So I just want to keep that in mind. I love the ideas, but we got to pay for it too.
Yeah, 2025 is going to be tight.
Yes.
Okay, so there's more pieces in the puzzle that have to be looked at in our move. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or whatever for the? If not, what we need now is an official motion, because the last town public hearing was literally in the middle of a select board meeting. This is its own public hearing. So to officially close the public part of the hearing, we need to have a motion to close the public hearing. And that's all you're doing is closing the public hearing.
We can still talk about it.
But we get to talk about it.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for the adoption of the 2024 municipal town plan for Jericho.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And now it's your turn to talk.
Okay.
And who wants to start?
Good.
You're good?
So I guess I have a couple things. First of all, I do like the town plan. Okay, I really do. I just have one hang up, and my decision is whether the hang up is powerful enough to carry it or not. My hang up is I'm just not overly enthused about suggesting changing of the governance of the select board and staff. And I looked through my select board handbook to see how we relate and how the town plan relates. And my worry is that there's nothing in there that facilitates a statement like that. And I've never seen a statement like that made in another town plan. So I'm a little cautionary to see it. My worry is if we adopt this, is it signaling to the public that we're adopting and moving forward completely with changing of management within the town plan? We go to town manager, we go to 5-person select board, which costs money. So I have reservations about that, only on that premise. And the planning commission is tasked with development and working within, these 10 items, and all of it centers around land use. And it seems like it steps outside of it a little bit. I understand you're making the connection between, we can't have one without the other. I get that. But I also know that the governance of the select board and how we manage our town, that's a town-wide item for the residents to look at individually. And I guess, and maybe the planning commission can offer this to me. And I wish they would, whether Susan or David or whoever. But how did this item make it here? Was it a question that the planning commission created and put out to the public for support? Or did the public openly bring this in an open forum? I guess that's my question.
Are we allowed to answer the question?
Sure.
I mean, he asked you, so
yes.
Yes.
Should I go to the microphone? Yes. Having being on Zoom, I know it's really difficult to hear when people aren't up here. So
Someday we're gonna get a mic over there that's gonna really work, I swear.
You got one.
I might ask Chris Brown also for help, but it actually came from both places. It came from public comment and specific comments like, we really need a 5-person select board, but sentiment from people who really don't know about town government. They just know that it's a lot of work and they want things to happen and they want to make progress on issues, and they feel like things get stymied and held up. And so we detected an interest in what we framed as capacity, which was basically like the ability to make change, and whether or not that's expertise, or is it money, or is it time, or is it bandwidth, or is it we just don't know what to do, or why do we go around in circles? That was like the public sentiment. Then there was public comment. We really should have a town manager. We really should have a 5-person select board. And then there was planning commission opinion that I would call an informed opinion that developed over time. As we worked through the town plan, it sort of became obvious to us that that would be a major facilitator. But we were careful, understanding that generally it has to come from the voters. We know the status of the charter. So the way we framed it in the town plan was not, we need to do this 5-person town manager thing. The town plan says we need to expand capacity. What does that mean? Hire consultants, spend more money, change how town is staffed, and consider. So Jim's right. We did do a lot of wordsmithing, meaning like we were very careful with the vocabulary. It says consider expanding to a 5-person select board, consider using a town manager structure, and consider how town resources can be best deployed to get done all the things that we want to get done. So it's basically 3 levels. Sentiment that we shaped into, we gave words when people were sort of circling around this idea like nothing's getting done. Not nothing is getting done, but it's not getting done fast enough. So it's not to not recognize that people don't work hard and that we have gotten a lot done. Actually, Catherine asked us to cite
accomplishments that the town has made over the last several years, which we also did do. So that's now reflected in the plan. It's not, so I misspoke there. It's not that nothing's getting done. It's more like it's not enough. It's not what people want, and it's not fast enough. So we gave that form into this idea of expanding capacity, and then specific public comment for people who are really in the know and they see other towns and they see how we've operated, and they public advocated for the idea, and then planning commission members had developed the opinion that it was the right thing to do, at least to consider it, not to say we should do it. So I think if you look at the wording,
and you're right, Susan.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right on the wording.
Chris, do you want to add anything? Because Chris was one of the people active in the discussions. I mean, everybody from the planning commission was active in the discussion. I would say it's a unanimous opinion also on the part of the planning commission that to at least consider it is a good idea. And I don't know if you're aware, there's also consideration now in Underhill, completely coincidental to ours. The Underhill Front Porch Forum now has discussions about this. And previous select board members have weighed in, the town clerk has weighed in, and they will have it probably on their town meeting agenda to discuss in March, whether or not they should expand to a 5-person board.
Yeah, they have the ability to do that on a floor vote because they don't have it in a charter. Like we
Right,
do.
it's not in the charter.
So
I was just
go
gonna,
ahead.
I was just going to say that, you know, I understand because, you know, there was a vote a while ago, and, you know, it was turned down to have the 5-member board. I just worried about where it says the planning commission will facilitate, you know, this so many years, whether any of those people have moved to the other side, or if you still have a number that. And that may make it feel more, the whole town plan, make it feel more politicized. And that's what because you don't want people to think it's a political document. And that would be my concern. I went back and forth, and I had all kinds of, you know, back trying to figure this out, because the plan is so user-friendly and really well-written and well-researched and such public input that you know, how would that one segment seem? Is that going to skew people's vision of what the planning commission does hereafter?
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So one of the things we talked about for getting it done compared to the current plan, which has like 700 tasks and 700 people responsible for every task, is we structured the table to not necessarily be the responsible party. It was only the party who had the very next step responsibility. The reason why we put the planning commission there is because we felt at this point in time we had the best bird's eye view of the issues, and we also have done a lot of work to develop communication and public outreach, and have developed, I think, a sense of a certain amount of public confidence in our process. So we were more offering our services in a way to sort of help get the process and the discussion going. I think I agree with you that it's important to me that the planning commission is not politicized, because I think that makes it harder to do a good job.
Right.
And so if you thought it was important to have a different entity responsible for that action in the table, if you wanted that to be you, or if you wanted it to be some sort of citizens group or John or something else, I wouldn't object to that change. I don't think it's necessary, but I understand if that would make you more comfortable. And also I trust your wisdom. If you think that that would protect the planning commission from being perceived as political, then I would support the change of the, not necessarily taking the action out of the table, but changing who's responsible.
Now, is that a substantive change? Because I don't want to take it back and have to start.
I think taking it out is a substantial change, because we've had now, you know, 8 to a dozen public meetings where we've discussed it. I think to change who's responsible is not a substantial change. I don't know, David, if you would agree with that.
He's thinking. I can see those brain cells.
I'm not
not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. I think to Susan's point, taking it out would be a substantive change for sure. I'm not sure if who's responsible for it, because I mean, ultimately, the charter says it's a petition.
It's a public. The public
Right?
is
It's
the one
petition brought by the
responsible.
public. So even the select board, you know, does the select board facilitate
No,
a
I
petition?
was wanting the public to be the entity.
So
And maybe would be the appropriate entity.
So I think I voiced these concerns throughout. And when we talked ahead of I don't remember if it was before or after on the same night as our previous public hearing on the town plan, or the previous select board where we had, you know, all the different ones. I don't remember. I had similar concerns of like, I'm just not sure it belongs in there. I personally don't know how I feel about it, but my feelings are sort of separate from it. It did feel a little weird. But in the last discussion that we had, where we specifically were directing changes, I think at least I personally didn't get hung up on that one. I had kind of moved on. I had accepted the softer language. I like them. I would have preferred that it move out of there, but I listened and I understood that there's a large volume of people that do like this, and so because of that, I landed the last time somewhere like, you know what, this is in the middle. It's not like it was. It's not out. It's in the middle. That's what we do. You know, we soften the language. It says we're gonna maybe look at it within the next 5 years. I personally would like to be done with the plan.
Yeah, but you do. We all. I was just worried about, you know, how if they actually had were the facilitators, whether it would be perceived as political.
Yeah.
And that would, impact how people feel about what the planning commission does.
Let me just, I don't know, David, you got the document up. Can you go to page 47?
Oh, I forgot to bring it. Oh no, I didn't. It's right there.
47, supporting effective community. Down towards the bottom, left-hand side. This one that gets me a little bit. Jericho must consider these 3 actions. It must is a pretty big, to me, it's almost in the same level as shall. And I get a little nervous with both those words. So Jericho should consider something like that. And I don't know if that's a substantial change or not. Just that light softening. I know it's our document now, technically. And again, especially I'll address you directly, Susan and David. I know how hard you worked this, and I love it so much. It's just this one section, because I in town of Essex, I've seen the town plan taken away from what its intention, used for something else by a minority group for a singular serving item or purpose. And I worry about that. I worry that we've got something new that's not typically in a town plan, and someone's going to grab that and start using it for a purpose outside them. That's my reservations, not the quality of this document. It's good. It's really good. I love the direction you went. But I'm just concerned. And again, if my fellow select board members don't see it as much of an issue, okay.
I don't have the plan in front of me, so I can get it, I guess.
It does say must.
Can you show it to me?
Must consider these 3 things.
3 key acts.
Yes, must consider
that one, changing the role of the town administrator, and the other one is
But don't you think must consider
sure helps the word must.
Should consider.
You're right. It does complement it. It tones it down.
Yeah.
Right. And also I think it would be almost like a disservice to make it a should, because then it's like
we're going from here to
right.
We're tipping that scale.
Like
okay.
Right, you're saying, well, you know, maybe we could consider possibly someday taking a look at if.
And it's not, you know,
Right, and it's not saying you guys must consider, right? It's saying the town must consider. Because it seems like at least an essential conversation.
Right.
And you're better off making a decision than just not, it's like a relationship, you know, if you leave it all buried, like eventually you're gonna have to talk about it.
So, well,
right?
actually, no, it's funny, Susan. So you bring the light, your point, how you see it. And that's the trouble. I get hung up on something. I constantly see it in this light, and you just brought another light. Again, this is the town's, in essence, if I feel comfortable that this is a town's voice and the town's speaking that this is something we must consider, must consider, then I am looking at it from the point of view that the planning commission is looking at it. And maybe my point of view is wrong.
It just says Jericho, right?
It just says Jericho.
Just says Jericho.
Right.
It does. So.
And that's why I think it should say the public rather than to protect the planning commission.
Yeah.
As the entity and the getting it done. And maybe that's less confusing because people don't understand that it's a petition and it's in the charter, like all the nuances that we understand.
Most people forget that we
didn't even, the planning commission, we didn't even know all the mechanics of it. And we learned the mechanics of it over the course of the discussion. So it would be more accurate to say the public.
Accuracy is good.
It would be more accurate in the like common view. Yes. Technically, if there is going to be a discussion of the pros and the cons and what do other towns do, we thought the planning commission could play a role in that. I think if you tell us that you would prefer that we don't play that role, then as long as somebody else plays that role, we don't have to do it.
I feel a little warmer.
The question is, can we go with public? I mean, it should be the townspeople who make that decision, to bring it forward, and then the public discussion starts.
Right. And then you could tell us if you want us to participate in that discussion or not.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a substantive change because I think you could clarify that as a correction. I think you could call that a correction. Okay.
Because I think that's a safer way for everybody, because people do understand what the charter is and what the rules are there. Mm-hmm. And then, but it is important under those circumstances to have a very broad public discussion of what it means and, what the changes are going to, do. And then if you add the other, part that you're talking about, then what does that mean? And where does the role of the select board become if you have a town manager? Because that's a big discussion as well, because select boards play a very different role under those circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Technical question, with the apparently exhaustive amount of rules and regulations in adopting a plan such as this, would it be at all possible, hypothetically, at this particular stage in this process, to adopt it as mended and mention two specific changes and not have, and just do it like we do with the minutes, right? Like we have the minutes at the end, we go, okay, we're going to approve the minutes with the 4 changes.
Or like a DRB decision.
Yeah. Like
approve it based upon
legal, or do we have to call
condition
flooding and get?
Well, I think
and basically you're talking about changing the responsible party in the getting it done
like
table.
If we list, like changing these two
from
words.
Planning commission to public because you want that as a correction.
And see, that's just a correction so that there's no more public hearings that have to be had.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
Because that would allow a couple things. It would allow some of these concerns to be tweaked a little bit more, and it allows us to be done. And I don't mean to say that disrespectfully, because I agree. No, but we have a lot to do. Like there's a lot that you want us to go do in this plan, and we can't even get out of budget season, let alone start doing any of this stuff if we don't get this done.
Right.
I guess I'm going to see what my other two want to do. I mean, I'm in favor of if my other two select board members, you know, are okay with as it stands, based upon the information and the point of view Susan and David have directed, I could move forward as it stands. Okay,
but I think it sounded to me, what I heard Catherine say was she felt pretty strong. Can you show me again the page,
but I would prefer
list,
Catherine's suggestion.
Yeah, and so
Right there.
What page is
We
that,
have
Catherine?
Linda and David
It's getting it done.
discuss,
Yeah, what page you on? 67?
So really just changing in the getting it done table, the column responsibility to lead, changing to
The public.
just write it
public.
physically on the paper.
Oh, he's trying to get his.
Yeah, he was trying to get it online.
his document.
It's 67, page 67.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
That's why I like paper. I'm a
I was gonna say, couldn't you just take a pen like this and
Yeah, I
then?
mean, that's what we do with the minutes.
The statute.
Oh, you're looking
Oh.
at the statute.
But if we don't know, it's not illegal. As soon as you look it up and get that answer, then we're gonna know.
Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. At least I told him. Police officer told me that.
We've followed like it has to be 99.9% of this law. If there's a
Yes.
we have done a lot of the statutory requirements on this.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't want to dismiss it because of that, but I think it has a little bit more clarity under those conditions.
So the statute says, like it or not, if any part of the proposal is changed.
Any, not even technical.
What,
Yeah, then, what's the if then part?
The legislative body at least 15 days prior to the hearing shall.
That's prior to the public hearing.
I don't think they thought these statutes all the way through.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't.
That's different than I recollect. Are you on the state website?
It's not really a change.
If it was, there were,
That's a correct, you know, because they do have corrections that you can do without having
I'm in
to.
trouble with the internet too.
The legislative body may change the proposed plan or amendment, but shall not do so less than 15 days prior to the final public hearing. If the legislative body at any time makes substantial changes in the concept, meaning, or extent of the proposed plan, it shall warrant a new public hearing.
But that's the word substantial.
So that's where you fit within the, and I think as a board, you could just, maybe you make your own determination as to whether you consider this to be any sort of a substantial change. It's not changing a policy. You're not changing a policy statement, the direction of the policy intent and direction of the plan. It's simply articulation of who's responsible for carrying forward a particular action.
To reflect accuracy, right?
Right.
Because
we
legally the planning commission can't do anything. They can go talk, they can lead it. Maybe they could lead the discussion, but they can't decide it. So I think that's what Catherine, don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like they've lost their right as a public citizen to either go out and petition themselves either. I mean,
Right. Right. To me, it's like assigning homework. And you're just saying we're not assigning this homework to you guys, planning commission.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it in the domain of the public where it belongs and where it's consistent with the charter.
I'd like to think the charter was written, the statute was written with the intent to help towns adopt the best possible plan they can with the most with the most participation that they can possibly get in the most fair manner.
Right.
And based on that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt this current draft of the town plan with one amendment to page 67. There's a table that says reconsider bringing forth a petition and public vote for election of 2 additional members of the select board as provided in the Jericho Town Charter. The next column of that line on page 67 currently says Planning Commission. The amendment would be to change that to say
correction would be.
The correction would be Jericho Public. So my motion is to adopt this town plan with that one change.
So one change.
That one correction.
That one correction. That one minor perfunctory
That's substantive.
deep
Clarification.
clarification.
I will second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Nice
Thank
job.
you.
Nice job, guys.
Nice job for you.
It was a nice
I
job.
have to, I think I speak for all of us to say it's extremely rewarding to hear you guys talk about the plan, that you've read the plan.
Yeah, we read the plan.
And that you like the plan, and that you see that the plan represents change and is bold and is
Showed up a month
different.
ago and I read the plan.
That's right.
Yeah, so
Well,
it's really great. Thank you very much.
Well, and it really shows the amount of work that people appreciate the amount of work that it was done. And it really is a much user-friendly, much more readable, lots of nice pictures.
Visually pleasing.
Mhm.
And so, and then you put, you just like the ECOS plan, they have the basic plan, and then all the data and all the appendices that go on and on and on and on are there for the nerds who want to look at.
Right. And we really couldn't have done it without Linda and David. I mean, they were awesome. They really kept us on the track.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Take the rest of the night off.
Yeah.
Ahead of schedule. I'll make
Before the expiration.
Yeah.
a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.